to order. We'll start with a roll call.
Mr. Updegrove?
Here.
Mr. Hemingway? Ms. Deeroff?
Present.
Mrs. Hogan?
Present.
Mrs. Denon?
Here.
Mr. Brophy?
Here.
Ms. Nyman? Mrs. McWhirter?
Here.
Mr. Foose?
Here. All right, will everyone please rise for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. All right, the first thing we have on the agenda for this meeting is the public comment. Do we know if anyone's signed up? All right, so we have no one signed up for public comment. We will move right into an update from the administration about the coronavirus, student, staff, and any impact.
Good evening, board members. First and foremost, I'll share with you my somewhat frustrating observation that many of my colleagues in the county kind of articulated today in our meeting. So 17 years as a superintendent and 26 as an administrator. I've actually, unfortunately, lived through 9/11. I was in D.C. And my school was geographically located almost in close proximity to the initial target, which was the White House, and then close enough to feel the vibration at the Pentagon when it happened. So I had to pass that every day going to work. I also lived through the sniper shootings in D.C., where we had to quickly adjust how we did business, and my school was an open campus. So I want you to imagine what that's like at an open campus. We didn't even have the cafeteria. So to shiftly quick and try to provide services. And then a school that I was high school principal of, was a school-wide, district-wide choice program. So students were traveling across the city on public transportation, if you have any familiarity with DC and the metro. And what I would say to you right now is, universally in the meeting today with all 18 superintendents, we clearly expressed to the representatives from that were there from Berks County, and not their fault, but they were there listening to us, with a lack of clear guidance and the inconsistency of information that is being provided, and some of you probably watch how it's played out at the federal level, but it's crippling us at the local level. More importantly, what recently has transpired that we pointed out is that there was specific guidance given to higher ed that was not offered to K-12 when it comes to one of the items that we're dealing with later in this agenda. And one of the things we articulated is higher ed has adults for the most part on their campuses. We have babies, teenagers, and honestly parents who send their children to us to act what they call a local parentis, and we are struggling with getting input. Any particular case of concern that we receive in Boyertown Area School District is forwarded to the email address that was given to us to seek guidance and feedback on how to handle that particular concern that is presented. Whether it be someone who said, oh, I was in CHOP at some particular day, or whether I was in this location when this happened, I will tell you that out of the 4 incidences that I've sent, I got one response, and that was because one person in Berks County Emergency Preparedness took it upon themselves to hunt down someone to get a response. Every other question I've sent, I've gotten 0 response and guidance back. So we spend most of our days scouring online, looking for information on how to be responsive and not overreact, because we're asked to be a conduit for information, but also one that helps manage the panic in our communities. And by the way, it's growing. Today we took down our Facebook post on a particular topic because people started panicking with rumors and comments about students and speculation, which is totally inappropriate in that forum. And I say that because I want it on record that we will not facilitate that type of paranoia in our community. And we will take down information and no longer use that as a source. In fact, our legal counsel hates that we use social media to communicate because of things like this. So I ask for your help in cautioning people to not try to use social media as a conduit for questions and answers, rather than using our dedicated email address, our dedicated phone numbers to call us directly or the school to get information. Right now, we are in a situation where Berks County has 0 identified cases at this moment. And notice I said identified. And that makes a difference between what we're asked to do versus some of you who have contacted us about what happened in Montgomery County. We are one of about 70 plus school districts in the state out of 500 that serve 2 counties. But each school district is assigned to an intermediate unit. By state code and statute, we are assigned as a Berks County school district. So we follow Berks County Health Department, not Montgomery County. We also follow and collaborate with the BCIU, and all 17 other school district superintendents regularly sit together and try to communicate, whether it be on email or like today in today's meeting at 8 o'clock this morning. So what's happening in Boyertown is that we are still in a prevention and preparedness mode based on the fact that we have no identified cases. The guidance that we are implementing is based on an area that does not have a COVID-19 identified in their community. There are multiple areas that CDC has asked and provided guidance for us to do and perform with. The first is review, update, and perform our operations plan. Boyertown Area School Districts has reviewed our current plans and is in the process of updating and adding any additional procedures as necessary based on new information, if plans are outdated or missing. The recommended prevention procedures and resources have been sent to both staff and students and families. Issues of concern are regularly communicated to the state agencies using their provided email for guidance and action steps, which I've spoken to earlier. The second item that they sent to us is about developing an information sharing system and communications plan. One of the main things that you look on the CDC site as a role of a school district is to be a conduit of information. And we have developed and dedicated a specific section on our website for parents to go or community members to get information about COVID-19. Additionally, we've been very intentional that we identify when something new from the original post page has been developed by signifying the date that information was added to make it easier for people to scroll and see what is different from the last time they've been on that page. Important information is provided through Infinite Campus and our social media site. Infinite Campus is when we choose to send direct communication to our parents, and anytime we make an update on that web page, we will send an Infinite Campus notification to our parents so that you know to go look and see what was updated. We are actively engaged in communication, planning, and collaboration with Berks County IU and the 17 other district superintendents. In fact, tomorrow, we are having job-alike meetings at the IU in the afternoon, meaning that all the IT directors have a chance to sit together and talk about the impact of the coronavirus in their areas. Special ed directors are together, all the superintendents are together, all of the curriculum and instruction people are together, all the facilities directors are together, and all the business administrators and HR personnel are sitting together trying to plan and develop consistent reaction and response to the coronavirus. We also, central office administration, receive direct updates via our school nurses. We have school nurses who are Department of Health licensed officials, so they actually get direct communication from the Department of Health. That information is then shared with the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, and then anything that's pertinent to us, we take corrective action or implementation within our schools. We're supposed to monitor and plan for absenteeism. Our schools and offices are monitoring both student and staff attendance. HR has been actively reviewing our leave procedures because part of the CDC and Society of Human Resource Managers, as long as the health department officials, is that we're supposed to be more flexible with our absenteeism and our staff attendance procedures and policy. In essence, to encourage people to stay home when they're sick. So we have done that, and we have sent direct communication to our staff. We've actually dedicated a specific telephone line and email for staff to not only report an absence that is tied to either travel or concern of possible contact with someone or something, to not only go to their supervisor, but they've been asked as a responsibility to communicate directly with HR. We do not want something to slip through the cracks. IT has developed an instructional and business function tech plan in case we are directed to close. Any closure decision will not be made in isolation of guidance given by CDC or the Department of Health officials. What we mean by an instructional and business plan is that how do we function or try to function to still try to offer in school, basically, to our students and our families as best we can. Currently, a review of our inventory indicates that we can actually serve our middle school through high school, 6 through 12, in a one-to-one capacity, at least taking their devices home. Will that be exactly like the instructional material they will be receiving sitting in front of the teacher? I would tell you absolutely not. There's no way we can turn this around and duplicate it that fast. Our challenge would be K through 5, and our tentative plan is that we would try to communicate through Infinite Campus. On the business side, critical staff have been brought laptops and portable devices to make sure that they can function from home. So, for example, we do not want to create financial hardships for our employees. We still would have to process payroll. If no one can come into an administrative building or school building to process that, we have to be able to try to do that remotely, because this could cripple families also financially if we can't function. IT has been working diligently to go around to make sure staff is familiar, to make sure they can connect to our network. Connection to our network will only be by district-issued devices, not personal devices, for security purposes. Even to the point that IT has actually been deployed to go to people's houses who are critical to make sure that they can function and communicate with our systems from home as necessary. When establishing procedures for students and staff who are sick, again, staff have received specific direction and a dedicated communication tool to report their absences, and then the reason why, so we can make an assessment in conversation with the health officials about what type of absence they need to have, whether it should be extended or not, or follow the 14-day protocol. Any staff or student who is sick is encouraged to stay home. We will always seek out officials' guidance when necessary to provide staff and families the information from CDC. First and foremost, we communicate to them if they have a question, only what we know and been given, and that's to clarify what the COVID-19 symptoms look like. Then we describe and provide for them information what self-observation means, which is people who are to remain alert and who are subject to fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, and I won't go on to the next part of that. Then we also provide information on what self-monitoring stage would look like. Our director of facilities has been directed to review and ensure that routine cleaning of frequently touched surfaces is occurring. In fact, he has a meeting with his lead custodians tomorrow to go over that. When I say common frequently touched surfaces, I mean doorknobs, light switches, countertops, where the cleaning typically is done already, but to ensure that we are being diligent about that. The staff has been reminded to use only cleaning products according to the documented label. In other words, we have to be sensitive that we don't want people bringing in non-approved or recognized cleaning materials by us, because we have students who can't be exposed to certain chemicals, and certain chemicals are not supposed to be used in schools. So everybody can't just bring in their own cleaning material. We're asking them not to do that. We have identified to the staff what items that we will allow to be brought in. Other than that, they need to go to the custodian to seek permission to either get resources from the custodian or seek higher approval if there's something new that they have a question about. No cleaning by staff is to happen while students are in the classroom. Again, we have fragile medical students that will be running a risk of exposing them to things that we may not be aware of. Students should not be asked to clean either. It is staff, in the absence of student being inside the classroom. Our transportation department is implementing a cleaning procedure for the buses. In a collaborative effort, we are trying to assist them in getting cleaning materials to also make sure that on a regular schedule, they are cleaning the seats on our buses in common touch areas. As you can imagine, it is difficult to get cleaning materials. As schools are a high priority, supposedly, as they tell us, And we have an outside contractor. We're trying to work collaboratively to facilitate us getting the materials for use on our contracted service bus. Teachers have been provided with classroom cleaning guidelines, as I mentioned. Absolutely no Clorox bleach is to be used by staff in the classrooms. They may use disinfectant wipes when students are not present. Teachers may request cleaning products from their custodian. The custodians have additional cleaning resources that through the director of facilities, they will issue to them so that we are ensuring that we are making sure that every cleaning material we use meets specifications for a school environment. They're also been reminded that every piece of cleaning material must have a label on it, and you must use it exactly as the label has indicated it should be used. And then, of course, we continue to review CDC's guidance for businesses and employers. We also review the Pennsylvania Department of Health, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and our local counter agencies. The second category that CDC puts out for schools is those who are in a community with an identified case of COVID-19, which we do not have. So what I'm getting ready to share with you would be in the case that we had an identified situation. And of course, first and foremost, our first step would be also again to reach out and talk to the officials, the health officials, to get direction on where we should function or operate and what procedures. As in Montgomery County, there are 22 school districts in Montgomery County, and I say that because some people saw that some of the schools closed, but that's only a fraction of the schools. So just because a case happens does not mean everybody shuts down. As some people ask and communicated, why are we not following what they're doing? That was done in an abundance of caution. For them to clean is what it was done. If our schools receive a direction to close, that would happen through the administrative action would happen based on a recommendation information received from health officials. Our schools are not expected to make decisions about dismissal or canceling of events on their own. We do that in collaboration with the information we're provided. We can and will seek guidance from local health officials to determine when and for how long we should take these steps. Should we be in the event of a temporary closing? Closing of schools is a strategy that they would implement to stop or slow the further spread of COVID-19 in the community. During the school closure, schools may, one, completely close, which you saw in Montgomery County where they closed completely, and they actually did it to clean the entire school. Schools could have a partial closing, which where they would be that no students would be allowed in the building and you'd be only open for staff. That is an option that could happen. In any event, any type of closure after school activities, field trips, and other events will be canceled or postponed. We're currently in the process of trying to figure out how and if possible to continue food services on a grab and go capacity should we be required to shut down. The big why question was discussed today because right now one of our concerns is that we keep getting asked to give families and communities information about prevention, but what's happening is becoming old and redundant to families, and we don't believe that they are reading the material anymore. And the question of why, and I think the question of why should be why is it different from the flu, since that's what it's compared to. And I'll just share this with you. And this comes from Johns Hopkins, not Dana Bedden. The symptoms of similarities both cause fever, cough, body aches, fatigue, sometimes vomiting, and diarrhea. It can be mild or severe, even fatal in rare cases. One difference, though, that was pointed out to us that I'll jump ahead with the differences is the flu, you typically feel the symptoms and the onset of it coming. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, you can go from 0 to potential death in a rapid pace as a surprise. It can result in pneumonia, meaning both of these are similarities. Both can be spread from person to person through droplets in the air from an infected person coughing, sneezing, or talking. A possible difference, though, however, in COVID-19 might be that the spread of the airborne route, and we'll talk about that later in differences. An infected person can spread the flu for several days before the symptoms appear. In COVID-19, it is believed that the spread is in the same manner, but they don't know for sure how long. Treatments. Neither virus is treatable with antibiotics, which only work on bacterial infections. Both may be treated by addressing the symptoms, such as reducing fever. Severe cases may require hospitalization and support, such as mechanical ventilation. Prevention. Both may be prevented by frequent, thorough hand washing, coughing into the crook of your and sneezing into the crook of your elbow, staying at home when sick, and of course limiting contact with infected people, if you should know. One significant concern also is that there's a 0.01% mortality rate identified for the flu. Right now, we were told that there's a 2 to 5% mortality rate identified for COVID-19, and some speculate that may be low. Differences in COVID-19 and the flu. They're caused by COVID-19 is caused by one virus, the novel 2019 coronavirus, now called severe acute respiratory syndrome, or coronavirus 2, or SARS-CoV-2. The flu is caused by several different types of strains of influenza viruses. Transmission, while both flu and COVID-19 may be transmitted in similar ways, the concern with COVID-19 is that it might spread through airborne route. Today, we're informed that the issue is that it is such small airborne molecules that it stays in the air much longer. So someone could have sneezed, coughed, left the room, and the particles could still be sitting in the air when you walk into a room. That is the difference. Typically, with the flu, it's a shorter time period before it drops to the ground and not circulating in the air. Antiviral medications are currently being tested, but there is none for COVID-19. The flu has antiviral medications. We always talk about the flu shot, so you know that. That's the difference. For vaccination, there is no known vaccination for COVID-19. A vaccine is available, useful to prevent most dangerous types and reduce the severity in the flu. The impact. In COVID-19, approximately 115,997 cases worldwide and 761 occurrences in the U.S. have been documented as of March 10, 2020. Comparison, an estimated 1 billion cases worldwide, 9.3 million to 45 million cases in the U.S. per year is what happens with the flu. The number of deaths, COVID-19, there's been approximately 4,100 deaths reported worldwide, 27 deaths in the U.S. as of March 2020. The flu, in comparison, has had 291 to 646 deaths worldwide. In the U.S., 12,000 to 61 deaths in the U.S. per year is the range that happens in a year. The COVID-19 situation is changing rapidly. Since a new virus causes this disease, people do not have immunity to it, and a vaccine may be many months away. Doctors and scientists are working on estimating the mortality rate of COVID-19. As I said, some believe the 2 to 5% number that is given may not be accurate. The above information probably answers the why, I hope, is why I shared it, why we need to be diligent in the prevention that has been offered. Prevention is the best course of action right now that we have, since there is no antiviral solution to it. Frequent washing, coughing into the crook and sneezing into the crook of your elbow, staying at home when sick, and limiting contact to infected people. We will be sending out a short one-pager of the actions that the district follows with pandemic issues before this week is out. But that is the current update of what is being done and has been done. Several communications and examples of documents are on our webpage. I think the last one was March 6th. Updates will be posted this week with regards to additional information, and of course our parents will receive an alert through Infinite Campus. This has consumed most of our day in our lives. I applaud the staff and the teachers for trying to stay focused and do their work. I think the staff will tell you that oftentimes I feel like coronavirus is my life right now. I wake up in the morning working on it, and I go to sleep at night working on it with communication. I'm begging for our community to stick to the facts, be transparent if you have an issue, but let's not start rumors and speculation that will create unnecessary fear. Be focused on prevention and the things that they have told us to do right now. Those who are concerned of why we're not closing schools, we don't just unilaterally decide to close school. We also have to be considerate of people's rights So if you believe that you have a concern of health and well-being, you have to make a decision for yourself and your family. We will work with you as best we can within the law to be flexible, to accommodate that situation. But there's no way we can meet every individual request that is being asked of us. It is virtually impossible. That's it for.
All right, does anybody have any comments or questions on that specific update? Ms. McWhorter?
All right, for starters, I have to give you a large kudos because that was an excellent review of everything that's happened so far in the past couple of weeks with COVID-19. And I think it's really important to tell people not to panic, not to head out and clear the shelves of everything, and to just stay diligent with monitoring, self-monitoring your family and for symptoms. And again, even when you get it, don't panic. We'll get through this. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Not to panic. Excellent review. Oh, it wasn't. I'll remember it at some point. That's it.
It's part of our, and we have, our director of facilities here if you have any questions, but when I saw his face, I do want to remind the board that our custodial staff and maintenance staff, many of them have been with the district for a long time and have done a yeoman's job in trying to maintain our buildings. In fact, typically people come in and they're surprised that our buildings are as old as they are and look the way they do. In other words, it's misleading. Oftentimes, the interior is misleading because they don't see the mechanical challenges that exist behind the walls. But at the same time, there's only so many of them. And this now adds a different layer of level. And we do have, as I mentioned last time with the update, a contracted service on standby. We always knock on wood that someone else doesn't tap into their service and we have an emergency at an untimely manner. But I just want to be transparent. Given the size of our schools, a typical elementary school, not counting maybe our smallest, but even then it may take, if we have to close down, it would take our staff by themselves at least 2 days to do an entire building. So I just want you to know that. And I'm going to be transparent. The square footage of our high school could take a week. So I'm just being, and our middle schools are next, probably half a week, 3 to 4 days, because they're right behind it in square footage and size, just to, parents to be aware that if that happens, and again, depending on the company that we have that we've contacted to support our team and our staff, that may dictate whether we're able to bring them in and speed up the process. But you would, at minimum, if it's just for precautionary measures and we get a case like happened in Montgomery, and I know that one because I've heard directly from them, but I think Lower Merion did the same thing. There was precautionary measures to clean. They did it in 1 day. We don't have the capacity to do it 1 day, and I think Cheltenham was a whole week, and it may be because of how many buildings they're doing and the capacity of the staff. So I would ask that don't compare when you say one district did it here. It's about resources and capacity. If the staffing is not similar, and I'll be honest with you, not to make light or of another district, but Lower Merion has a lot more resources at their disposal, so they probably could deploy more people quicker than we could. So you're talking about at minimum 2 to a complete week, depending on the circumstances and our capacity at that time, that if we have to close down and do a complete building cleaning process.
I think we can move on to the discussion about travel.
As you know, the situation has continued to evolve for international travel. And as it is continuing to evolve, As the situation has continued to evolve, I reached out to our high school principal and in consultation with the leadership team that we needed more options with regards to, while we're probably about 2.5, 3 weeks away, it is growing at a rate that is concern to us in an abundance of caution and safety for our students. We have been given options to postpone the trip. In your board docs is a communication document from the company. We are proposing that a recommendation is to postpone the trip. It is called Explorica. And they have provided, the issue is that we have to respond by March 16th. We do not have a voting meeting where I'll be asking you to rescind your approval for the trip because it come to the board for overnight. You would have to do that by ratification after the fact. So it's kind of like in anything else when we've had an emergency situation, it is just getting consensus because you can't vote at this meeting. It is not a voting meeting. Option one is that they are able to change the travel dates of the group's current tour to any dates up and through August 1st, 2021, moving all current participants to the new trip. Obviously, part of that is if you're seniors, that doesn't work for you. So option two is modify your group's current tour to visit other locations in the same dates. And then option three is to cancel your tour for all participants, and they're allowed to have transferable vouchers. And if Dr. Foley could come up and speak to your thoughts.
Hello again. It seems like we meet every week about this. So working with the company, obviously last Tuesday when we met, they had not had any policies or anything in place at that point. And of course, we've been in constant communication with them, and finally they came out with this just based upon the pressure they're receiving from us as well as other schools. So when we look at this, the option one obviously is to take that trip, and it would be good for all the way through next school year. Again, the problem we have there would be some of the seniors may not be able to go on that trip. When we counted, and it was a rough count, it was about 27 students that would be affected by that. Just so you understand what would happen, that by saying postpone, it gives us the options to exercise these. Which also, in conversation with the company, they said, well, if we have a case where those students would be there, then if they had the insurance, then they would be able to refund their money less the $600. If they did not have insurance, they're still willing to refund those kids' money less $800. Now, just to explain what the insurance is, if you got the best insurance you can get, the best you ever get out of this is about 75% of your money back. So both of those options are still better than just having the insurance, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's a really fair option for our kids. The trip was about $4,200, so just to give you an idea. So that's a really fair option. Modify the tour. I know I was joking with you the last week, said, well, let's just go to Pearl Harbor. Obviously, that still involves a lot of travel, so I'm not sure that would still be the best option, but we are looking at other things as well just to look at this, but this will buy us time. And then, of course, the last option would be if students would decide that they want to transfer that voucher to a younger sibling, they could do that, or any other trips that they have that Explora would be able to offer our students based upon that voucher, so that they would get dollar for dollar in that exchange. So they gave us a lot of really good options by allowing us to postpone this. So that's obviously what we're asking for. Anybody have any specific questions? Or yeah.
So that is either option one is for everybody, option two is for everybody, or option three, or these are.
It can be mix and match. Because it'll be mix and match just because, for example, if we choose option one and we don't get to do the trip until next school year, then there's going to be, like I say, a handful of students that will not be able to take advantage of that, which means then we could go to option two with the refund piece. Okay? With that particular group of kids. Does that make sense? Or they could even transfer that voucher, dollar for dollar, to a younger sibling too. So we could use any one of the three.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay.
Is there a specific number that we need to meet for the trip to continue? Like if all the seniors said, yeah, I'll just take a voucher or get a refund, would the remaining
75 students will still travel.
Okay.
Yeah, all that is still in place.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just as you're asking your questions, again, you can't vote here, but typically consensus that I would have to trigger action and send a communication to them of our intent to postpone. So it's really a matter of anybody had objections, making me aware of that, that because you would be ratifying after the fact for us to stay within process and procedure outlined by the state for a governing body in following procedures.
My biggest fear with the trip, as it is right now, is if somebody becomes ill when they're over there and they get put into a quarantine for 14 days, at which point their parents would probably have to come and get them. And that would be the parents' bill, the staying there for 14 days and going and picking up their child.
Well, we've also been made aware, beyond that, some of the travel challenges that when you get somewhere, things are constantly changing with the travel situation. So that has a certain amount of uncertainty with it now going on also, that you could be stranded.
For an extended time, too.
Mr. Brophy?
Being that we've gotten these options, which thank you for getting those, that probably was a lot of teeth pulling to get them. I just don't see where we're not postponing it is really a smart thing to do. It would seem to me that with all the uncertainties, especially the reports about the quarantine and being stuck over there, in some case your parent doesn't have a passport, they can't come and get you, which is another issue. So I'm looking at I'm for postponing it, absolutely. I have no qualms about that.
So so we don't get like we're voting here, the question is, anyone have a issue with it? And if you do, speak up. If not, I don't want people to think I'm polling the board, taking a vote. So I'm not trying to cut him off, other than if you're going to speak to something other than making it look like I'm getting a count. So we don't look like I'm polling the board for a vote here.
Yeah, I think sounds like you have a good idea of what we'd support and use your best judgment based on the feedback.
My final comment with regards to travel, at the current time, and we haven't finished collecting it, we're running into a challenge with nursing coverage. Certain trips our nurses have to go on because of medical conditions with students. What's happening now is we're already short nurses in our schools, and now they're going for a trip, is leaving schools uncovered. So we may have to take some emergency action and streamline or limit some of the field trips going forward to make sure that we have coverage of nurses in school. They also become our first conduit many times for Department of Health information, that when we're not getting a response, they may be because they are licensed and they get direct communication from DOH. So we're having challenges now. So Ms. Torsha is collecting that information at this point about field trips. I have all of the overnight ones that I'm looking at, and collectively the team will be reviewing and trying to make some standard of how we decide which ones and which ones are not viable for us to continue, because we're leaving buildings now without medical professionals, and the medical situation is heightened now.
So, my question is around, it's twofold. Staff attendance at maybe conferences and things of that nature. I know you had said the Berks County staffs they had a meetup and they're having another one. Has there been any thought put into restricting travel to conferences, and also for our public meetings? Are there any consideration or thoughts for how we might try to avoid exposing anybody at a public meeting?
Today's meeting this morning gave the same advice, individual choice right now. That the main thing is that we have not had I forgot the term, community spread issue for us. Now, I would tell you that if it is going to a location and I'm aware of it, I won't sign off on it. So that is for sure, that if we are not assigning off on anyone going to a location where we have an identified case. Absent of that, they obviously it's individual choice. I mean, we could obviously choose to do what we want to do, but they are not putting any restrictions on that. But some organizations are canceling their own events, like PASBO just canceled their own conference. So some of that is happening on its own right now. But again, but the staff travel, and then they have issues. We did send a communication about travel, especially if you go to anywhere that has a level 2 or level 3 indication of what the protocol is. You automatically are told you stay home for the 14-day period. If it turns out that that area gets a level 2 or level 3 label by CDC. It's an automatic trigger that we've sent out to say you will stay home for 14 days and wait for us to see the evolution of what happens. So that was sent and communicated. That's an automatic expectation. But if it's a site that we know that we get a report that there's an issue, like I would tell anyone right now, you don't want to go to New York. And I'm actually proud of the governor because he's being very aggressive and very clear about his frustration with the lack of guidance. But it's a challenge with the public transportation system as they're concerned right now. That's creating a challenge. So I would be very, if I saw it come across my desk, I'm not signing it. For example, like a place like that right now.
Ms. Hogan?
So there is a case in Montgomery County where they're not sure if it was community spread or not. It's the first questionable case. Taking that in mind, are we rethinking even the way our sports teams travel around and the large gatherings? Like I know there's a basket raffle this weekend that's like 400 people. Are we rethinking any of those things?
Again, they have not recommended any, but if you do that, then you might as well cancel your music play and all those other things. So we won't be able to pick and choose based on popularity. We'd have to be consistent. So if we're going to do it, it'll be a blanket, and that's not what they're saying is recommended right now. Obviously, and they won't tell you do X, Y, and Z unless it's a positive case. Everything else is just guidance. And their guidance still has not said for us to do that, but told people basically looking at your individual health, your current status to make informed decisions about it, or if you're concerned to not attend those events. Right now, several school districts, like we have Mamma Mia, all the superintendents responded. All of them still have their plays going right now, thus far, in Berks County. I mean, we've purposely polled each other to see. We're trying to promote some consistency in the county of how we are responding to this, because right now, so far we're so good, but if something happens, we're also mobilizing to be consistent and trying to how we respond to this. But I mean, the board always has the right to request that we do what you're asking, but it would mean, I would say we need to be consistent across the board. Because I think the first week in April, for example, is Mamma Mia. PIAA has sent out direction regarding their events. So they're trying to maintain a certain type of decorum. I don't have that with me. Did you bring that in with you, Allison, at all? Anything you want to share to give an example of what they've sent out? If you can come up to the mic, so Ms. Hogan can get an idea and the rest of the board of what they've sent us.
So this press release will be posted on the website later today. We're going to do an email update as soon as this portion of the meeting is over. So this is included. It's a press release from PIAA dated yesterday, basically talking about the fact that they have two big public events happening. One was started today, and then tomorrow there are basketball games which do not impact our students. There are also state swimming and diving championships at Bucknell tomorrow. They've been in constant contact with the Department of Health to monitor the virus situation in Pennsylvania, and both groups are continuing to promote the following items: no cancellation of public events or community gatherings at this time. The Department of Health is monitoring the state and working with all area health departments for consistent messaging and evaluations of citizens' health status. In the cases of discovered coronavirus, one person infected does not correspond to community spread. People who traveled to known areas of having the virus are known and being monitored and evaluated daily. It goes through the same prevention protocols that we've shared multiple times this evening. If there is a threat or there is new information to the PA Department of Health through its website, they will post the most up-to-date information, and pre-game and post-game handshakes may be replaced with fist pumps, forearm pumps, or elbow pumps. But that is basically what they've said at this point. They're in the same situation. They're monitoring and continuing to watch what's happening. But we will be sharing that via the website tonight.
And they have, to that, for instance, several of the school districts that were supposed to host had to shut down for cleaning, so they scrambled to move and relocate those events to areas that don't have an identified concern. To your kind of point about Montgomery, I think one of the schools hosting was a Montgomery County school district that shut down, so they had to move the event. You said Hershey, they moved?
I'm not sure where they moved that one.
One got moved to
Swimming's
Hershey
at
and one got
Bucknell.
moved somewhere
Yeah.
else.
So just to be clear, I would say my concern isn't so much for students or healthy people, as they seem to be weathering when they get it, weathering the virus fairly well. My concern would be more for the elderly or people with immunocompromised systems. And we know when we have things like plays and sporting events, grandparents want to come out and watch those things. I know the basket raffles are, I see lots of older people there. So that's just my concern, is more not spreading it to our students, but to people who are just,
And that makes sense. And the recommendation is for, it's always uncomfortable when you start talking about age, because it feels like you're singling people out. But the reality is the guidance we're getting is at 60 plus is the magic number that, and I'm not far off from it, so it's hitting home, that conversation, that should make due diligence decisions to not attend large-scale events. So that is the recommendation that they have made. So in lieu of canceling them, the recommendation is that, and if you have respiratory or other some type of breathing condition, that you should not attend the event. Now, what we can do is push out reminders of that. Again, to your point, and hopefully people will adhere to it and look at their case and decide not to attend. I know this community, they love the school and their kids, but we would not feel like they're not loving us by staying home. In fact, as my pastor said when he promoted fist bumps and elbows, don't think we don't love you anymore, but we don't want the spread of germs. We want to do our part, as he said it. And that's what we would take it as, is you're doing your part to stay healthy and safe. And we want you to be healthy and safe, so when this passes, you can come back next year and the year after that.
I just want to add real quick, because it's a delicate balancing act. Like we're dealing with a virus that on the one hand mostly presents fairly mild symptoms, but on the other hand, there's a lot that we don't know about it. We're still unsure of the actual mortality rate, and the suggested numbers that they've given right now are substantially higher than the flu. And we know a lot about the flu already, and yet every year when flu season is upon us, everybody becomes much more conscious about washing their hands and doing their diligence. So with this, obviously, similar to the flu, there should be an abundance of caution. Everybody practicing good hygiene and things of that nature. But because of the nature of us not knowing as much about this yet, because of the mortality rate, especially with the older population and people that are immune compromised, we need to do everything we can to try to minimize exposure. And if somebody who might be healthy and survive it just fine, not even notice it, maybe not a big impact on their life, but who are they coming in contact with? And who else could they possibly expose it to? I might be fine. My grandmother, when I go to visit her, might not do so well. So you have to, and we also have students who are immune compromised as well. So we need to keep all of those different populations in mind and just be reminded that there is a lot that isn't known, and being able to contain it for as long as we can gives scientists more opportunity to try to get a vaccine and other medications out to people that then we're able to more effectively treat that or give people some head start on their immune response to it. So that's the biggest reason that all of these different thoughts and actions are taken, but it doesn't mean that we shut down and go into isolation unless we have a reason to. So for right now, we have an abundance of caution. We're trying to have heightened sensibilities, but until we're given direction that there is an immediate need to shut things down, it's business as usual, but on high alert.
I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Foley and Dr. Bedden for all the extra research they did, all the work they put forth, the extra hours in order to keep the community informed, and thinking of the students first with what could happen if they were to go. Thank you.
Ms. Dennett.
Yes, I would echo what Mrs. Duroff said. I know it is self-consuming. I was here yesterday and had 5 minutes because you were consumed with dealing with this. So I appreciate all the effort that has gone on with this. My opinion is that unfortunately, this is something that changes daily and hourly. And as of now, I think we're good with going ahead with the play and sporting events and the basket parties, with the understanding that we have done our due diligence as a school district to put out as much information as we can, that if you are compromised, if you are elderly, you might want to, consider whether you're going to go to the play or to the basket party. And that, I think, is individual responsibility that the community has to assume as well. And I just am glad that we are monitoring it, and to keep in mind that this could change next week. So I'm very satisfied with the work that has been done and happy with the work that has been done by the administration. And at this point, I think where we are is where we need to be.
I mean, it's very fluid at the moment. So I mean, it could change by the time we leave this meeting. But we are, as was said, we're doing due diligence, which is the appropriate thing to do. Hopefully, people are understanding that this is rapidly changing, and the fluid nature of it, that if we do need to make changes, we will communicate those out quickly as well. But accuracy is important too, and it's also important for the district and any of our communications that we're very clear about the updates that we're giving, so that people understand where we're at, and we don't induce panic on our own as well. Mr. Foley, Dr. Foley.
On a great positive note, our students are safely and enjoyed a whole day at Disney already. So as we did the inspections last night with them and this morning, we made sure that everyone had this big tub of Lysol wipes, soap, and I couldn't find any hand sanitizer, but I filled bottles, 2-ounce bottles of soap so they could take it in the carry-on. But they're there, and they have a protocol that they will be following, and they get reminds every 20 minutes. Don't forget to wash your hands. Thank you, guys.
Did we create our own district labels like New York did?
We wish we could have, but Bochi was saying that we were back and forth on the phone, and it was in between him manually creating our own little bottles because we couldn't buy any. So they were spending a great deal of time as the staff, including the principal, making our students individual bottles for them to take on the trip.
Thank you.
Then we want to thank Allison reached out to our Business Advisory Council members. I think 2 of the banks donated when we couldn't get them off the shelf. I can't remember their names, the 2 banks, but they brought in a bunch of stuff to you to take to the high school for our kids to support them on the trip from the Business Advisory Council. So we do want to publicly thank them.
All right, does anybody have any other committee comment? All right, seeing none, I don't have any specific announcements. We have a committee meeting. Following this, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Does anybody want to move to adjourn? Ms. McWhirler, second. Mr. Brophy, this meeting is adjourned. We'll be back in 5 minutes.